I'm here with Colonel Richard Johnson, and he gave a speech today about the military entomology and what's been going on, past and present. And so I would like to ask where you're from.
Originally I'm from Wilmington, Delaware.
So where did the military come in?
Well, while I was in graduate school, the military, all three of the services, send people back for training for graduate degrees. And so when I was at the University of Florida, where I went for my master's and doctorate, there were a number, kind of a succession of military entomologists that were coming back for their doctorates. And so as I proceeded to do my research, I kind of saw what they were doing in their career tracks and thought that kind of sounded interesting.
What would you say the most interesting assignment that you've worked on has been?
Oh, definitely my Kenya assignment. It was interesting. It was a kind of a transitional year. I'd met my to-be wife before that, so I went to Kenya, engaged to be married, came back, and during this time was when Operation Desert Shield was happening, and my wife, who was an Army nurse at the time, she was thinking she might go, and I was coming back to get married, and so it all worked out well. I mean, that's real medical entomology. It's not. It's kind of primitive in that people were out living in just a typical African countryside.
Do you have a favorite insect or a group of insects?
Yes, I do. I've mentioned phlebotomy sandflies are what I started out working with on my doctoral research, and when I was in Kenya I was able to work on them again, and now in my current assignment with the Uniformed Services University I'm able to work on them. I like them because they transmit a parasite that you can actually see in a microscope, so it's not like a virus that is imaginary until you use electron microscopy. You can see the leishmanian parasites growing in the sandfly. It's important, but not so highly populated as a field of study as some of the mosquito-borne diseases, so it was just kind of more interesting. And the fact that it draws in the wildlife aspect. The disease is normally in many forms. It's in various wildlife, rodents or others, and then sandflies are the kind of the bridge vector from the wildlife to man. So my love of the wildlife biology aspect I get to pull into studying this disease, which I wouldn't if I were to study malaria, which is just mosquitoes and man. So sandflies are my love of research.
What do you think is the most critical issue for entomologists in the military right now, if you had to identify one biggest issue?
Well, of course, the continual deployment. Many of our entomologists have been deployed to Iraq, and many of them have been deployed to both Iraq and Afghanistan. And so for military entomologists, I would have to say just knowing that coming in now, you may have to spend time away from home. It's not unusual for other crop protection entomologists to go off and help if you work for USDA, but going off into a kind of remote area and with its not having the same levels of security, having to deal with some of the issues and being away from home for extended periods of time is probably the biggest issue for military entomology now.
So you started out with an entomology degree and then did military, correct?
Right.
What got you into entomology to begin with? Is that what you wanted to be when you were growing up?
No, I wanted to be a wildlife biologist, which for whatever reason everybody can understand that. You say you want to be a wildlife biologist, there's no, how did you get there? But wildlife biology is what I really enjoyed doing, and I was involved in that in high school with various aspects. I was a day camp counselor at a nature day camp when I was in high school. Then University of Delaware did not have a separate wildlife department, so their department was entomology and applied ecology, so that's where you went. And they've since kind of separated that out now, but back in the mid-70s when I was there. And so just to get a degree in wildlife, you had to have many of the core courses were also some of the entomology courses, so I had to take those. Didn't mind taking them, but I had to. But the medical entomology course, which is taught by the late Paul Katz, was really, I thought it was fascinating to listen to that. He made the connection. And a couple of guest lecturers that really kind of brought home entomology in the real world rather than just entomology in academia. How there are problems out there that people have to deal with. And so I would have to say that professor and that course are really what kind of made me start thinking about how wildlife per se may not be exactly what I wanted. But I will have to admit that when I was applying for graduate programs, I didn't do the application process right, and I did not get accepted by the couple of programs that were more of the wildlife that I wanted to. I did get accepted by the one that was more of a entomology and wildlife. So it's kind of serendipitous. I look back and say, I'm glad things happened the way they did. If things had happened differently, I don't know where I'd be today. So that's how I got into entomology.